Hello and welcome back to now the 14th episode of Devil Dash. We haven't had a lot of football this season, but we had a game this weekend, and it kind of went a lot like the first one, Josh. We're going to get into what went down this weekend against UCLA. We're going to be talking about what's going on next year for the Sun Devils, because it's time to face it. This season means pretty much nothing for ASU. And then last game of the season, always a big one against U of A. It's been some awesome games. No matter when the teams are good or bad, they're always good games. So we're going to get into that. But first, we are diving into ASU's now second game of the season, where some teams have now played double-digit games, and ASU is now at 2. They lost, Josh. They lost by 7. 25-18 was the final. What happened? What went wrong? And, why did ASU lose?
Well, hey, we tried our best. It was a complete opposite from the USC game. If you look at the USC game, we played really good in the first half, and then the second half we disappeared. Well, it was the exact opposite. We were nowhere to be found in the first half, especially defensively and offensively. I hate to say it too, but we couldn't mount the comeback in the second quarter, in the second half of the game. And credit to our Russian guys, White and Chip. They did a great job, but hey, Jaden's supposed to lead this team, and I don't think he did his job against UCLA.
I agree. Looked a little off. That being said, Jaden put us in a position to win this game. The defense couldn't get it done, and he couldn't get it done at the very end, which is now 2 weeks in a row where 2 weeks in a row. Sorry, 2 games in a row. Has not been 2 weeks in a row.
Man, I wish it was 2 weeks in a row.
2 games in a row where Jaden Daniels has had the ball with under 2 minutes to go and 2 timeouts, and now it's 2 times that he hasn't been able to get it done. The first time he only needed a field goal, and we couldn't get that done. This time was a little bit different. There's no excuses to be made. He simply didn't get it done. But the refs definitely had a big hand in that last drive with the illegal man downfield, where ASU's lineman was 1.5 to 2 yards downfield, which is within the law. I think the law is you can't be more than 2 or 3 yards downfield, and you don't make that call there in a 1-score game. If he's 5 yards downfield, yes, but it's such a Pac-12 ref way for ASU to lose. And, it's not on the refs. They definitely just had a hand in that last possession. But, I thought Jaden Daniels played better than last week. And, his accuracy was a question after, the first week against USC. But, it's something that he wasn't very accurate this week, and I'm not going to give him a break on that because, we hold him to these first round expectations. And, he did go, what was the stat? 21 for 35. So not good. But I think this game was a little bit different because we were actually throwing the ball downfield. We were taking shots, which against USC with Frank Darby out, we really did not take any shots more than 20 yards downfield. So, what do you think of that? Do you think Jaden was better in the accuracy section of this game compared to USC?
It's hard to say. Yes, in a sense that, I like the fact that we're taking more shots downfield. That's good to see out of this offense, especially, all these Zach Hill moving parts, a new offense. But we've got some good wide receivers on our team and some tall guys who can, especially Johnny, you can go up there and get those air out passes. But I don't know, Jaden, I think he could have done better than, accurate or not. I think he could have done better than he did.
There's no doubt. He definitely could have done better, and there's no fighting that whatsoever because, like I said, the expectations for him are higher than what he's playing as right now. But I kind of want to touch on, a lot of people, our Dash, other co-hosts from other schools are saying, Jaden's now he's the second best Jaden in the conference behind Washington State's Jane DeLora. I just butchered that name. I apologize. But, there's a lot to say about this because we've seen teams in the Pac-12. We've seen, teams in the Big Ten and, other conferences that have had games canceled. Even one game, they come back the next game and look rusty and they don't look good. They don't look like they want to be there because with a canceled game, your season's practically over. ASU not only lost a heartbreaking defeat to, what is the, there was their number one running mate for the Pac-12 South, which is a lot of teams wouldn't bounce back from that in normal season. Then to have 3 games canceled and then come out and, put on a good game. A lot of other teams did not do that. And after that, and it's tough because they I'm sorry, Nathan, you threw me off here. Credit you for that quote. I apologize if I mentioned something that you said. I apologize if I did not do that intentionally. If I stole a quote from you, I'm sorry. But it's really hard that. Oh, he's talking about the second best Jaden, the second best Jaden in the conference. That's what Nathan's talking about. But they're saying is ASU overrated, and it's hard to say. 0-2. There's no excuses for an 0-2 team. Absolutely not. But there is a lower expectation than we had before. After that week 1 loss, heartbreaking defeat, no reason we should have lost that game. Our Pac-12 South championship shot was practically over after that game.
Yeah.
Then to have 3 weeks canceled, and it's just hard to expect a team to come out and look like one of the best teams in the conference. Everything considered, I think ASU played okay. I'm not going to say they played well, but the defense did not play anywhere close to where they did against USC. But where Dorian Thompson-Robinson really killed us last year was on the ground. And he didn't do that well on the ground. I think he had like 45 yards, and he had under 200 yards passing. So all things considered, I think ASU, look at the stat sheet and how the game went, they did enough to win. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think it just didn't really come together at the end. And, DTR's stats might not have been there, but I think he really excelled. And this kind of goes back to, 3 weeks off, and, the whole team the season wasn't over, but the team knows how big of that USC game was, and, what's really salvageable of the season after that into this game. And that's where, like, what I've said about DTR is he really just did a lot better than Jaden in decision making and that part of the offense. And I think that just showed, especially late in the game, he made the plays he needed to make. I mean, like you said earlier too, the Pac-12 refs got their little 2 cents in, like they do in the basketball games too. I mean, it's like they're all on the same page
every game. And I have a question. If Nathan's still out there listening, Keaton Slovis was. I know they went 2-0, so it's a way different narrative. Keaton Slovis was very average to below average through 2 games. So for people out there that are being critical of Jaden Daniels, it's where do you think this season, what does this mean for him is my question. I asked that to myself. I don't have an answer for that, but Jaden hasn't been awful. I know he's definitely, we want to see more out of him. But Keaton Slovis against a not very good ASU defense, which was, that's the bottom line, is they're not very good. And then a very bad Arizona team. Keaton Slovis looked pedestrian against those two. I know he picked it up late when it mattered, and that's a sign of a good quarterback. But Jaden Daniels is in that same spot. He's played 2 games with a 3-week break in between. I think it's very hard to judge him off these 2 games, especially after the great freshman year he had last year.
Yeah. And do we have a question in the chat?
Yeah, it was Nathan commenting to what I just said. He said, I think Keaton was still pretty good through those 2 games. Nathan, I agree with you if you look at his stats through a whole. If you look at how the game was played against ASU, I would not say he was good for 3.5 quarters of that game. And like I said, he made the big plays when it mattered. And, that's what won him the game. And that's what makes a great quarterback. I'm not saying a quarterback has to play great every single game.
I think we expect more out of Keaton, a little bit more than we do out of Jaden. And that's why, him throwing the ball 41 times or making 41 completions in a game and getting like 360 on us is kind of not sub Keaton, prime Keaton, but he can do better, especially against Arizona.
Yeah, exactly. I think ASU definitely has a very formidable defense. I've been talking about them as one of the reasons that I predicted they could have won the Pac-12 South. Obviously, COVID, they haven't won a game, and COVID has played a big part of that. But this defense hasn't performed. They still haven't found that identity. And that's something that I wrote about before the season even started, is what is this defense's identity going to be? And I think COVID has played just a huge part in some of those little things in the season. Our defense doesn't really know what their identity is. What is Jaden Daniels' number 1 target? We still don't know that. I mean, Frank Darby, I think, had the most receptions, but he had 5. It's not like he had an 8 or a 9. Look at Amon-Ra St. Brown. He had 4 touchdowns in the first quarter against Washington State. That's what the number 1 receiver does. And I know they have more weapons around, and, we've only played 2 games, but there's just so much to this team that hasn't been answered that they still have so much more potential. And I think they've showed that just by being in these games, especially against USC. I mean, it's tough to say what USC team we were playing, considering the next week they also went out and not laid an egg because they still won. But you know what I'm saying? It's hard to say what USC team we played. The team that's rolling right now, or did we kind of stunt that start to their season? So
remember too, Ashari Crosshill and Jack Jones both out against a dynamic quarterback in DTR, and I mean, hey, you're gonna ask how big a difference can two guys make? But those are two of the best guys in our defensive unit.
All right, we're about to move on, but my last question for this: who had a better game, DTR or Jaden Daniels?
I think DTR did. I mean, at the end of the day, game-winning drive, that kind of seals the deal for me.
Yeah, it's so
Not
tough.
Game-winning, but in the last seconds, but he clutched up.
Yeah, let me pull up the stats one more time before we move on. So DTR finished 18 for 24, 192 yards and a touchdown. And then Jaden Daniels finished 21 to 35, 225 yards, a touchdown and a pick. And then they both had a rushing touchdown on the ground as well. DTR did have 49 yards to Jaden Daniels 6, which I think is a big reason why the offense was fluttering, is Jaden Daniels couldn't run the ball. DeMonte Trayanum did a great job, 15 carries for 108 yards. Our running game seemed to be there, but we kind of fade away from that. And Jaden Daniels threw the ball 35 times this game, which you really don't see from a Herm Edwards offense. But we are going to move on, and we can still kind of talk about this because this topic doesn't really have a correct answer. But where do you think the Sun Devils fit into next year's Pac-12? And I'd love to hear from you people in the chat that aren't ASU fans, because I definitely have some Homer glasses on when I talk about Jaden and ASU, and I try to be as clean as I can about it and be honest. But it's different when you watch every game, and I don't watch every USC game, I don't watch every U of A game, so it's hard to be critical when you don't watch literally every game. But where do you think ASU fits in to next season?
Top 3 team in the Pac-12.
Pac-12. Where do you think they fit in the Pac-12 South?
I don't see enough progression in this year to see them overcoming. They're not going to have Keaton next year, my guess.
No, he will be there. He's only a sophomore this year, so he has to stay for one more year.
So I don't see him getting over the USC hump next year in the Pac-12 South.
So it's interesting. Nathan said, I'm still a Jaden fan. Dude has been dealt some tough circumstances this year and has not done that bad. That's how I feel. I mean, the bottom line is we expect him to be a first-round talent. Next year's draft class has really been Keaton Slovis 1, Sam Howell 2, and then kind of a bigger gap with Jaden Daniels. But, there's always a run on quarterbacks going into the draft. So I think Jaden Daniels is still probably going to be a late first-rounder if he can improve next year. Obviously, there's still a whole season to be played. But next year, I think, is tough. I mean, the 2 USC games that have happened since Jaden Daniels has been here versus Keaton Slovis is – he didn't play the first one. ASU gave up 28 points in the first quarter and still almost came back and won that game. And then the game this year, it's so hard to judge. Like I said earlier, what teams were playing. It was the first game after a 10-month break where California teams couldn't practice, a lot of stuff like that. But ASU was dealt a lot of those same cards. I know we had a few more practices, but we were the better team for 3.5 quarters of that game. And I really don't think maybe the gap between Jaden and Keaton is bigger, but the gap between ASU and USC, I really don't think is that big. I know the game was only 1 point. Next year, the game's going to be at ASU, hopefully with fans, and I think that definitely pays a difference. So, I think we're kind of going into the same boat next year as we were this year. It's ASU, USC 1 and 1B, and then Utah kind of fitting in at that number 2 spot of how good they are with, barring injuries, barring whatever COVID deals for next year, hopefully nothing. But I think it's definitely interesting. Do you think Tyler Shuck has proven that Oregon's going to be the best team in the Pac-12 next year?
I don't. I mean, not after they lose that game to Cal. I mean, Garber's got to give credit to Garbers and that team. It's a great defense. Lot often overlooked, and Garbers. I mean, he didn't go off. They only put up 21 points against a good Oregon defense, but hey, they got the win. Man, that was Oregon's game to lose.
And 2 things. We called out Cal earlier in the year. I personally did. I was a big Cal believer going into the season, thinking that they could challenge Oregon for that Pac-12 North title. Boy, was I wrong on that. But, they had a game canceled to COVID, came out the next game and really laid an egg. They really did. They did not play well, and we had 3 weeks off. So I'm curious to see how ASU performs against this U of A team. But that being said, Cal is, a COVID cancellation away from, picking up some momentum. I'm not saying they win that game against UCLA, and then against Stanford, they scored a touchdown and had an extra point to tie the game to send it into overtime, which got blocked. So they very easily, let's count that UCLA loss. They could be sitting here with one loss right now. And they could be they would be in the contention with Washington and Oregon for that Pac-12 North title. I think there's going to be a lot of average teams next year. I mean, USC is probably going to be the best rankings-wise, Oregon second, and then I think there's going to be a muddle of Washington, ASU, Colorado even. They've surprised us this year. Colorado, Utah. And, there's going to be a lot of teams that go 7-5, 8-4 that are probably going to be higher ranked than they are because they beat some Pac-12 teams. But I think ASU is going to be one of those teams next year. And I'm hoping that one of those wins is against USC, because when you play a whole long schedule, if you lose one of those games, it's not likely that a team's going to go undefeated unless they are one of the best in the country. But, in this 6-game season, anything can happen. So my question is, if ASU is in the Pac-12 North, what place would you put them in? Do you put them behind Oregon, in front of Washington? Give me kind of a place where, because I'm kind of curious where you rank the Pac-12. That's kind of where I'm picking your brain right now.
If ASU is in the Pac-12
for
North,
next year,
I would have them behind Oregon and UW. I would. So
you'd have them fourth in the Pac-12 next year behind USC then as well.
Yes.
But you think they're better than Utah?
I do.
Okay, I like that. I don't agree. I think ASU is going to be better than UW, but I definitely agree that Oregon they have more talent than ASU. I know we beat them last year, but it's really, obviously upsets happen. I just think they're more talented than us. And then USC, like I said, I really think that gap is closer than it appears. We have 2 more comments. Jason Minuti, Colorado is honestly not that good. That's a good point, Jacob. They haven't really, I really wanted to see them play USC this week. Would have made it interesting. And then we have another question. What also they need to improve on most? I think it's going to be Jaden Daniels. If this team legitimately wants to win a Pac-12 South title, that step has to be Jaden Daniels. He has to be the best, if not one of one, and him versus Keaton, the 2 best players on the field, where when they played USC, he was okay, but he wasn't the best player for ASU. And I think that's where he needs to take the jump next year if ASU wants to win a Pac-12 South title. What do you think?
I think you're completely right. And I think a lot of that just has to do with, Jaden not getting a bunch of live reps under this offense. And he's got the practice. They've got the dry run throughs, and without pads or whatever you want to call it. However, Herm's running their practices and all these specific COVID protocols, but he hasn't gotten that live in-game experience, making those adjustments, 5 seconds on the play clock, things like that, little things like that can make a big difference in, game-winning drives or late in the third, fourth quarter.
And something I talked about to all of our, our Dash hosts here, that the reason ASU has been, a fun team is because when they get into those close games, they win them. Because, Herm Edwards is the type of guy that runs the ball out until we get a game-winning field goal. And this season, he's not done that. That's 2 games now. He's had the opportunity to be a game manager where we've had leads late in the fourth quarter and our either defense couldn't get a stop or we couldn't pick up a first down, to even get in field goal range. And I'm not questioning Herm by any means, but it's definitely something, that ASU needs to improve on. And again, it all comes back to that final point of how much did COVID really play a part in the season? From the lead up before the games even started, from, USC starting slow to cancellations, and who really cares? And we kind of only dashed over it. But with Jack White being out, he's really one of the big losses. He heading to the NFL draft. Starting corner, he looked great against USC, and that's going to be a big loss. But other than that, there's a whole lot of pieces coming back. Does Frank Darby come back because he didn't get a whole lot on film for the NFL draft this year? And
he should.
Yeah, I think he should too. He's not going to get drafted. He could get signed undrafted, but there's going to be a lot of key pieces. Both these running backs, Rashad White and DeMonte Trayanum, are both coming back. That's going to be a big win. Our run game has run. We've had both games. One of them has gone for over 100 yards rushing.
Yeah,
and
impressive.
If we can cut out some of those fumbles on the 1 yard line, I believe Rashad White fumbled twice actually in the game. But just some of those little things, the penalties, the fumbles on the 1 yard line, and ASU's in a not 2-0, but a way better situation than they are now. And I think the narrative about Jaden Daniels and just kind of what this team can do is way different, even if they're not in contention for that Pac-12 South title.
I think ASU is going to be in a close – this is my hot take prediction. ASU is going to be in a very close battle for that 5th, 4th spot against Colorado next year, and you bring up all the Pac-12 teams. Hey, they got something – shout out my boy Jason Marks. They got something special cooking in Boulder.
I'm not high on them. I'm paying them their respect because they're 3-0 this season. Sorry, Jason, I'm not high on them, but I am giving them the respect that they deserve for being 3-0. So the thing about the Pac-12 though is just there really isn't. USC has the potential with Keaton Slovis being the potential number 1 overall pick next year to be that best team, but. I mean, as long as Clay Helton's the coach at USC, I don't think they're going to be that number 1 dominant team like Oregon used to be with Mariota. But that's going to play out next year. We'll see it. But moving on, Josh, we have the big week this week. We could be 0-46 going into this game, and this game will still mean a lot. It's U of A week. It's hate week. The Territorial Cup, and the team's combined record going into the game 0-7. Tell me what you're most excited about. What you're looking forward to.
I tell you what, I'm trying to really build some real excitement for this game. I mean, this season, I know I'm not wrong on this. This season has just been a complete letdown. I mean, maybe this is just an ASU dash perspective, but I mean, look, there's been other teams that have it a lot better than ASU and U of A, U Arizona. This is just going to be the battle of the winless teams. And I mean, we already know who's going to win, obviously, but it's just
shout out Jacob.
It's going to be fun to watch.
And to be honest, you just said a lot of teams have had it worse. I would make an argument. I'm not saying they've had it the worst, but come to COVID, I would make an argument that ASU's had it worse than anyone in the country. I believe I don't know this for sure, but I believe ASU is the only Power 5 team to miss 3 consecutive weeks due to COVID, which that just stops all momentum, especially when you have a 6-game season. But when it comes to U Arizona, sorry, they're not U of A anymore. U Arizona.
Thank you.
When it comes to U Arizona, Gunnell, we still don't know if he's going to play. He's very hyped by Pro Football Focus, but personally, he's not going to get a whole lot of love from us over here in Tempe. And I think that's a consensus feeling, kind of around the Pac-12 because we've seen it with Jaden Daniels this year. He's 0-2. He was one of the best players in the Pac-12 last year. He's 0-2, and people are talking about how Jaden Daniels is overrated. So, when you don't win games, this is a winning business. If you don't win games, you're not going to get the respect you deserve.
They'll eat you alive.
Nathan Agron said, my team is 4-0, and I've hated this season. You're not alone. Feel bad for ASU. And that's why we're not kind of sulking over here. It sucks that we haven't had games. It sucks when you wait all week and Saturday rolls around and you see Washington State play Oregon State, or even a Utah Colorado game, something like that, a little rivalry game that doesn't mean a whole lot. It hurts a little more than when your team's not playing. And then Jacob said, Arizona is literally on an 11-game losing streak. Nobody has it worse than us. All right, Jacob, I'm sorry. I was talking about COVID issues with cancellations, not football-wise.
Dating back to last season.
Gunnell definitely not playing. It will be Plummer against. That's good to know.
Yeah, he hasn't thrown yet, and he wasn't throwing at the Colorado game, so it's really not looking like he's gonna play against us, which is
it's good. Yeah, well, we will take that. But I think another interesting thing to note out, I kind of didn't even notice this during the game, but ASU made a kicking change during the game. Christian Zendejas, the famous Zendejas legacy that has a lot of U Arizona history in it. He got not benched. I don't know if kickers get benched, but we had a 46-yard field goal that Zendejas has been known to be accurate but not have the leg, and we brought in I don't have his name, Jack Luckhurst, a freshman from Santa Barbara, and he hit a 49-yard field goal and then took the extra point after that. So that's something to look forward to not look forward to, but keep an eye on if you're an ASU fan. Who takes the extra points? Who's taking those field goals? And has Herm lost his trust in our kicking game? That's something to look forward to. And then Jacob said it's not official yet, but he hasn't practiced at all since the injury. So, maybe we want him to play a little rusty.
Hey, I'll take either one of them. I'm not afraid. I think ASU and Herm Edwards are going to exploit this U Arizona run defense. I mean, it's non-existent, you guys. Colorado put up I'm pretty sure they put up like 300 on the ground against Arizona last week.
Oh, they put up 400.
Sorry.
Broussard had 300 alone,
Not that it matters.
which is huge because what's looked best for ASU so far this season? It's been the run game.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not passing. It's not defending. It's not getting pressure on the quarterback. It's not turning the ball. It's not getting picks on defense. It's been running the ball with DeMonte Trayanum and a little bit of Rashad White with some passing game out of the backfield to White as well. This could be a big game for the running game. But that being said, Arizona also ran for 268 yards against Colorado. That is a big number. I know it gets outshadowed by the 407 for Colorado, but it's not like ASU has this stout run defense. So they really need to stuff the box. And I'm looking at Plummer's stats. 19 for 32 for 154 yards. He averaged 4.8 yards. That is not good. That is a recipe for a loss. And Jacob said, "What is run defense? Never heard of her." Trust me. Hey, Jacob, I don't know if you remember this game, but I think it was 2017. I was a senior in high school. I went down to the U of A ASU game, and it was Manny Wilkins, N'Keal Harry was there. I forgot who the quarterback was, but U of A did not attempt a pass in the second quarter. And the quarterback I think he was the backup. He was playing for an injured player, but he ran for like 200 and some yards in the second half as a quarterback because ASU couldn't stop the run. And I just see nightmares of that because I think they had 2 or 3 wins going into that game. And now, we're both winless. I think ASU is going to be favored probably by over a touchdown, but I never like these favorites in these games because they're always so close.
Well, yeah, and I'm a base.
Jacob said, "Oh, I remember."
Hey, I'm a baseball guy, so this thing that I can relate to is the Dodgers and the Giants. I mean, no matter what, the Dodgers could be winning at the top of the division, and the Giants will be, thinking about the next draft pick. But hey, they come into a series. It's gonna be, game 3 is gonna be the deciding factor, and it's gonna be a total of 5 runs scored. So that's exactly what it's going to be like in the Territorial Cup. I mean, these teams do not like each other, COVID or not. I think we're going to see some scrappy play. I'm really looking forward to it.
Jacob said Arizona was 3-9 that year. Trust me, I was at the game in Tucson wearing my all gold. I remember it vividly. I forgot who the name of the quarterback was, but interesting stat. I think it's criminal. We've now gone 7 minutes into this segment and haven't mentioned 2 years Territorial Cup game. The last time Arizona State played in that Arizona Stadium, U of A had a 19-point lead going into the fourth quarter.
Favorite game.
19-point lead. And Benjamin and Manny Wilkins and N'Keal Harry just kind of put their foot on that rivalry and kind of a little piece of ASU history. But here's a little pretty crazy stat. In the last 5 Territorial Cup games played in Tucson, ASU has trailed entering the fourth quarter every time, but has come out at 3-2 in those last 5 games with pretty epic comebacks in 2018 and 2010. So, I mean, it's a pretty interesting stat that ASU, they don't play all that well in Tucson, but I think it's interesting that the game's close enough where they can pull out these, like we saw with Herm, these game manager where it just seems like everything went their way. And whether it's ASU or U of A, it happens to one of them where it goes one of their ways, and for the opposing fan, it feels like the world is falling on top of you and that your team just hasn't passed Pee Wee football yet.
Well, we saw U of Arizona play USC pretty good, and I didn't really watch that game. I can't attest to if that was really just Keaton going out there and laying an egg, or Arizona really stepping up and defending him well, but. This is a game where, if I'm Herm, if I'm Jaden, this is the last game of their season. This completely messed up season for what it is. Take this opportunity right now. This team that you absolutely just discussed. Go get that. We got the cup, so we just want to keep it in its case, right? We go keep that cup in its case, and you have to be going out there and firing on all cylinders. Yep. And if we don't have 175 rushing yards, not counting Jaden, has to be Rashad White and Chip Traynham, then this game to me is a letdown because I just saw Colorado's guy go off for 300.
Yeah.
And I mean, credit to Colorado. They are undefeated, but this is just a game where ASU really needs to kind of put some stamps down and be like, all right, this is our game we can build off of for next year.
And we're about to wrap up. I'm going to ask for a score prediction in a second. So, start thinking right now what the score is going to be. But I think this is big for ASU going into the last game of, this season is just, you got to throw it over your shoulder and you got to be short-minded if you're Jaden Daniels. You didn't go 0-2 this year. This is just kind of some preseason games for next year for, what's potentially his last season in Tempe. This is a great way to get some momentum over your rival. If you can, which I don't think it's going to happen, but if you can steamroll them and say like, hey, this is the real us. This is our third game of the season. We shook off some of this rust, second game in a row. I think this is a big building block into what this ASU team could be next year. So put you on the spot. Give me a score prediction.
All right. I got the Sun Devils winning 31-27.
I like it. I think it's going to be high scoring. I think it's going to be 42-31. I think it's not as close as it appears, though. I know I've just talked about how close these games can be. The more I think about it and the more I look at Will Plummer's 26.7 quarterback rating against Colorado last week, Sam Noyer only threw the ball 19 times. He only had 92 passing yards. He did throw 2 picks, but that sounds like a Jaden Daniels game to me if you've ever heard of it. So that has Jaden Daniels written all over it. We both think ASU are going to win. Reach out to us on Twitter. You see our @s below on the screen. If you think we're wrong, that's all the time we have. We will be back next week, I believe, for what's going to be the last. It's going to be the last recap of the season because the season ends. ASU is not making a bowl game, so we will see you hopefully next week. Make sure to follow us on Twitter @DashSportsTV. Make sure to follow @SportsPac12. We have articles, ASU and all Pac-12 articles coming out there. That's @SportsPac12 and at @DashSportsTV. We will see you next week, guys. Thank you.